Welcome to the Empower LEP podcast. I am your host, Jana Parker. I'm a group practice owner. I'm a licensed educational psychologist, and I'm the owner and a mentor at Empower LEP. Today, I hosted Carla Titus. She is a fractional CFO. She has a company called Wealth and Worth Within. They actually specialize in supporting group practices as fractional CFOs, and they have everything from one-time project-based work to monthly fractional CFO services. And she was a wealth of information. I think this is a really popular topic among us LEPs as we are starting out business or thinking about growing our practices. We really just talk about starting your business up, setting yourself up for success, what to do kind of, as you're thinking about bringing on other people, and how you might use monthly fractional CFO services. So listen in. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Hey everyone, just two quick notes while you enjoy this podcast. The first is if you are going to NASP, which is coming up in February, I really hope I see you there. And I want to let you know that we're going to do an Empower LEP happy hour on Thursday, February 20th at 5 o'clock at the Sheraton Grand Fountain Wine Bar. The Sheraton is only a 7-minute walk from the convention center and from the Hyatt Regency. So I really hope that you come over and join me and the rest of our community. For the first 20 people who show up, I'm going to buy you a drink. And I would love for you to RSVP at empowerlep.com/NASP so that we can just anticipate about how much room we need to reserve as we get there. Okay, so 5 o'clock, February 20th, Sheraton Grand Fountain Wine Bar, RSVP at empowerlep.com/NASP, and I'll buy the first 20 people a drink. Secondly, I am going to do a giveaway because we have had a couple of reviews and I said I'm going to give away mentorship opportunity for one lucky winner. So I have my little spinner here and I am spinning. Ooh, okay. So the winner is, it's not actually a name, but it's Selim, uh, Berdi. So ClimBerdi. You are the lucky winner. So I don't know who you are. So please email me at jana@empowerlep.com and we will set up a mentorship session. All right. Enjoy the episode. Welcome, everybody, to the Empower LEP podcast. I am here today with Carla Titus, and she is from Wealth and Worth Within, which is kind of a tongue twister. Welcome, Carla.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Me too. Me too. So I brought Carla on today because there are often a lot of questions about money and finances. In fact, I just got one. I just got a comment on Facebook today, or like something in my Facebook group that was something about, what bank should I use
Mhm.
for banking? And I was like what, and I was like, are there perks to that? Like, I don't even know. I just went with my bank who I bank with already when I opened my business accounts. But I was like, maybe I should have been thinking, is there a benefit to banking with one bank over another? And I really don't know the answer to that. Do you?
Well, there's always options, that's what we said. And I think we have to value for the best fit. Sometimes when we're looking for bank alternatives, we want to work with maybe local credit unions, as we grow and want to have that kind of relationship. It's also about the service you get, the options that they give you for types of accounts, and then also considering can they grow with you long term? I find that some clients chose a bank at first that worked really great for their first phase in business. And over time, they felt like they've outgrown the ability for the bank to service them. And that is just, a situation that happens. And then you got to reevaluate and then go make a decision because changing banks is hard. Having to connect everything and where payments go is not an easy task. So we don't take that lightly, but it's definitely something you can do is, assess and change if you feel that that's the best decision for the business.
Okay. Yeah, I know that was something I never thought about. It's interesting, all these things that we start to think about when we start to become business owners, because most of us have just been school district employees and we're stepping out into something a little bit different. So, Carla, thanks for joining me and tell me about your business and what you do for people.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Wealth and Worth Within. We've been in business for about 7 years now. And my background was in corporate finance before this. And what I realized is a lot of small businesses don't even know what we do and what finance is. So let's start there, because I think there's a big distinction between the types of roles that your business will need at different stages in your journey. And you want to make sure you're working with the right professional alongside when needed. So to start, you want to have a bookkeeping function, which actually it is a service we do provide as well. A bookkeeper that can help you make sure your transactions are categorized. You have things in order from a bookkeeping perspective, because at tax time, you're going to need that and you don't want to wait till tax time to do it. So having someone on top of it so you don't get behind is super critical. And also outsourcing this function early, because you have better things to do as a CEO that only you, CEO, have time to do and can do. No one else can. So get this off your plate as quickly as possible as soon as you're able to afford to outsource it. And then second, like I mentioned, tax time, right? You're going to need an accountant by your side, helping you understand, what's the right entity, how do we save on taxes, how do we plan for that, how do we strategize around it to make sure you're paying just your fair share on taxes. We love paying taxes around here, by the way, because it means we're making profit, but we only want to pay what's necessary, not anything extra. So bookkeeping becomes really critical in your journey to, saving on taxes, because if you categorize things right, you get the deductions for it and your accountant will thank you at tax time. And then third, there's this role, which is the function that we provide as a service, fractional CFO, Chief Financial Officer. And what we're responsible for is leading the forward looking of your business. So if you think about your bookkeeper and accountant, they're working on the present and past. When it comes to CFO, we're looking at the present past to inform the future potential of what your business might be able to accomplish. And we do that in the form of strategy and setting direction at the leadership level, working with the owner. And then we put numbers to that strategy in a financial plan that also gives you action steps. And this is key, because I think there's a lot of people out there that can just throw numbers up on the wall, say, here's how you get to X number. They don't tell you the how. And then they left you thinking, what do I need to do to achieve that goal? Well, the CFO should be answering those questions for you. And if they're not, then you might want to reconsider who you're working with. But that is the function of a chief financial officer in your business. And you get it at a fraction of a cost than a full-time role would otherwise cost you.
Ugh, gosh, yeah. I was telling you before we jumped on here, like I did this. I hired a fractional CFO last year, I guess, to help me through a couple of projects because I realized as I was starting to bring people into my practice, um, I mean, at first it was like, how do I set my prices, right?
Yes.
And then it was like, how do I compensate people? And based on the prices that I'm charging clients, how do I make this make sense? Like I didn't know how to do that.
Well, nobody taught you, right? You just became a business owner because that's what you love to do. You're good at it. And we want you to stay doing that for a long time. In order to do so, we have to make sure that your practice is profitable, both short term and long term. And in order to do that, it does start with pricing. And pricing is, they always say it's an art, not a science, but there is some science behind it. You can run some numbers, you can run some scenarios where you say, I want my pricing to be X. I'm just going to make it up $150, right, for a session. And a session could be defined as 45 minutes, an hour, it depends on your service. So make sure you're clear on what that is. And then you're going to go look and see what are other people in your area to make sure you're benchmarking yourself against the competition. Not saying you will charge the same, because maybe you have differentiators like quality, maybe you have certain certifications that make you stand out above the competition. So it's something that you want to make sure you're comparing and contrasting and setting your price accordingly. And then the other side of pricing is really understanding what is the cost to deliver that service in that amount of time, that 45-minute hour session or so. And your costs go beyond just your time. I think this is the easy one, right? Everybody says, oh, well, I want to make this much per hour, so I'm just going to price it above that and then we're good. But you forget you have maybe a computer, you have software, you have other things that you're paying for in your business to run and operate the business every month that need to come out of that leftover from your pricing being set correctly. And also, at the end of the day, pricing is an exchange. So if someone is not willing to pay you 150 for a session, then your pricing is not working and you need to go revisit it. So that's the other part of, the whole calculations, like making sure that someone is willing to pay that as well.
Mhm. Yeah. And then if you start to bring people into your practice and then you're paying them, then you have this whole other this whole other thing, like,
Gets complicated fast. With every new hire, we don't really take a pause to think, what is our compensation structure? Because guess what? Nobody has ever talked to you about that before.
right,
Because you were just like, I just need to hire help because we're busy and we need more people and we need more clinicians to see more patients. And that's what happens, right? You start to get busy, you hire. And then you say, yes, sure, that compensation works for me. Let's go. And then you're just like, get in there, get sessions going, let's go. We don't pause to think, well, did we set the right compensation structure for that clinician and then any other clinicians we hire from there on? And that's where you want to take a step back and work with a CFO to crunch those numbers. We want to understand what is our margin. This is the revenue they're able to generate times the number of, sessions, the weeks available versus the cost or compensation that you're giving this employee and what's left over. Ideally, there's some leftover, and we'll talk more about kind of the right level margins, but there should be plenty left over for you to cover operating expenses. Because guess what? You probably are renting an office. You probably have internet. You probably have other costs, admin support that are doing a lot of the work to take that off your plate. And you have to make sure you can afford all those things and still have profit left over.
right. And pay yourself and
Oh,
have
please, yes.
yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because we talked about several different kinds of models, like a lot of people do like a percentage model in our field, or like a flat rate per like big assessment that we do. Some do hourly, and there's just a lot of different ways to go. And I think it's hard to kind of find that sweet spot, so I ended up hiring help to do it. And it wasn't easy and it wasn't very popular, like with my staff, when you have to change things, right? You have to change things,
Mhm.
but we got through it.
That's fantastic that you did get through it because that is a hard thing to do as your existing staff might feel like, well, I signed up for one thing. Why are you changing? And now it's working for me.
Yeah.
Why the change all of a sudden? And the part that's missing there is as a business owner, you have to do the things that work for the business as well as take care of your people. We
Mhm.
always say it's people and profit, not one over the other. And when we can afford to pay people more, we'll be happy to do that. But if the business does not run profitably, nobody has a job and nobody's going to get compensated, not even you.
Right.
So making sure that the right decisions are made, even the hard ones. And there's ways to do it. You can transition over time with every new hire to the new compensation model over time, grandfather people in. Sometimes it does take a drastic change with existing staff and compensation, tough conversations to make it all work.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, then, we're going to hold your hand along the process to make sure that you feel supported because we know how tough that is. And also expect some churn and like people will make their own decisions. And there's nothing you can do about that, but offer an explanation or help hoping that they'll understand why this is necessary. And at the end of the day, that you're trying to keep everyone employed.
Right. Exactly. And the roof over everybody's head and, paper in the copy machine.
Yeah, because that keeping everyone compensated is a big responsibility. So we
Yeah.
do not take it lightly.
Yeah. Okay. So let's kind of go maybe through the different things that people could use a fractional CFO for at different stages in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm working in schools. I kind of maybe want to do something a little bit on the side by myself in private practice. Maybe I want to do a little bit, just a little bit. Or maybe they're like, okay, I'm ready to really start something, but it's going to start out small. It's going to start out just me. How might I use a fractional CFO to get started?
Yeah, so you want to start mapping out some of those plans financially speaking, and then part of that plan might even include how much do I need to save from a runway to
Right.
be able to jump into business for myself. And this is something like this is the math I did when I went full time in my business. I'm like, well, how much just in case things don't work out? Because not everything is perfect. And I know everybody sells you the dream is like to own a business, but it's harder than it looks.
Yeah.
Saying it from the inside. And Jana can agree with me on that.
Yeah.
So making sure you have your runway, because guess what? When you're desperate in business, you end up with like not really great outcomes. So you want to make sure you have some peace of mind knowing you have a safety net. So maybe it's about how much money do I need to save before I jump in? How much are my startup costs?
Mhm.
How much am I going to charge per session, like you were mentioning, right? Some clarity around that. How much can I afford to spend on XYZ? Like we always are answering those questions are popular at every stage, right? Can I afford this? Can I afford that? And it's all about trade-offs and opportunity costs. So what we're allocating money to means, we don't have it available for something else that comes up. So it's just decisions you're making in order to ensure you understand what are you prioritizing, how much is it going to cost you. And the one that I see a lot of people not doing is what are my alternatives? Sometimes we just go with the first one we see. We're like, oh, well, we have to spend XYZ on this. And we're like, well, have you considered renting it or have you considered borrowing one? Or like, can you like test it out for a minimum cost first before you go all in and, make that expense a full expense? And people are not thinking about the options. So we're all big on like, okay, let's look at options. What can we afford to do? And then try to fit everything in the budget. And we create that forecasted budget, which a lot of you maybe are not familiar with. We're looking forward 2, 3, 4, 6 months, sometimes 12 months out on what we think the expenses are going to be, on what we think the revenue is going to be in the business, and also tying it to those actionable steps, like I mentioned, on making sure that you know how many sessions per week do you need to be hitting in order to hit those monthly revenue goals. And then, therefore, if you hit those, then you have XYZ to spend on operating expenses. And if you don't hit your goals, guess what? Now you have less to spend on operating expenses. You have to adjust accordingly. And the thing that I don't see people doing is that second part. They just keep spending at the same level, thinking, well, the money will come. And maybe, but but if it doesn't, now you're spending more than you're making. That is a problem.
Right. And so do people actually like do you help kind of set that up for people on like, I would assume that that would be kind of like a smaller scale thing. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know, do you have like an hourly or do you have a little package for people who are just kind of getting started and just want to make sure that they're thinking about things? It, the way that I think about things now in terms of like uh different services that
Mhm.
I use in my business, it is really starting to make sense where people are like, you need to farm it out sooner than later. And that is such good advice because it will take me, and it did take me because I didn't do this when I first started, like
Mhm.
so much longer to figure the things out where I could have just gone, let me just put a little bit of money towards having somebody who already knows this stuff help me. And it's going to save me so many hours, so many mistakes, so many, it just all the things. It just makes it streamlined so much faster. And um, and then I like trust that it's happening because that person's a professional doing that. So
And they're delivering that product to you, right? That analysis, that forecast, that budget. Yeah, we do provide that one-time project support because we know a lot of smaller businesses don't need us on retainer monthly because it's a one investment they can't afford to make just yet. We, of course, will love to get them to the point where they need a fractional CFO and can work with us on a monthly basis. But sometimes it's just a one-time project. And we do offer that service on purpose because we know smaller businesses that just need access to the expertise and knowledge that can fast track them through that. Because, like you said, you either pay for the time to learn the lesson or you pay the price to get learning faster. Ideally, that shortcut to the learning curve is much smaller and more efficient because now you're getting the results faster to get to the same answer. So you get to choose, right? Some people maybe don't have the resources, so they'll choose the time and they'll take them longer to learn. Or some people that can put the resources behind it will hire that out as a one time project. And I think that is important for some of our like providers like us to be able to have some form of access to that expertise in the way of one-time fee project base because it limits the exposure to the investment so that they know what they can afford to do, and also it contains the scope to just the things they need right now.
right.
And in the future they might need more support, and that's fine, they can come back when that time comes, but it doesn't have to be a huge investment right away that every month you're committed to that actually puts you in a worse position financially. And this is something that we should be able to tell you as part of our conversations, like, hey, in your budget we put a line for this, but you're not ready for that, or like this doesn't, the numbers don't support that level of investment yet. When you get to this milestone in revenue, then you can go ahead and afford that next expense or investment that you're considering.
Yeah, I love that. And I had, a couple projects that I did with a fractional CFO, and it just like gives you peace of mind too. Like, okay, all right, I get it now. And I've learned so much, you know, I've
They
really,
should be answering your questions, right? They should make you feel empowered
yeah,
through the knowledge they're sharing in the session. And it's unfortunate because I heard from some other people that sometimes their CFO is not making them feel that way, quite the opposite. And that makes me really sad because working with us should always feel like you're exploring new possibilities, opportunities for growth. How can we make it work? It's not always a yes. Sometimes it's like, oh, that doesn't work. But here's an option that can work. Would you be open to exploring that with us? And that is what the mindset of the CFO should be in answering your questions and helping you understand some of the concepts that might feel a little daunting or just outside of like what you know, right, around managing finances and helping you get there with them on the conversation on explaining terminology, explaining just how things work and function. So now you feel like you get it, and then you're able to even ask better questions because, okay, now we got that out of the way.
yeah.
Now we can have the next level conversation around, okay, what to do next.
I love this because the work that we do as educational psychologists, this is what you're describing right now. I'm envisioning this is what we do with families when we're helping families understand what's going on with their kids and then what we do about it. Like we empower them with new knowledge and strategies, and we teach them something that is going to help them as they move into the future. So it sounds very like synonymous with what we do. Although you're doing money and we're doing children, you know?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
numbers like can be scary, and we don't want to add to that pain, right? We want to ease it, simplify it, make it approachable and attainable so
Mhm,
that more of you can feel like you're in control of your numbers and the numbers don't have control over you. And that comes with, some education, closing the gaps of knowledge, and then going from there.
mhm. So, what kinds of questions do you get, and what kinds of services do you provide for people who are in that growth phase? Like, okay, I've been doing this for myself for a while, and now, oh my gosh, like I am so busy. I need to bring on other people. I'm, and like you're saying, like most people kind of just go, I'm just going to do it, and then I'll figure out the details later. Um,
Yeah.
so what kind of support can you and do you provide at that stage? And what do you think are the important things that people really need to think about when they're right there?
Yeah. So if you're getting ready to start growing, I think the first thing you want to ask is, how am I going to grow? So is it providing the same type of service, hiring similar providers? Because I think sometimes people have ideas on how they want to grow, but they're not sure if they can even pursue them because they don't even know where to start. And sometimes it's things like, well, should I, be providing assessments or evaluations or testing or some form of service that maybe it's not the one-on-one type of service, or should I continue to do the same thing and just do more of it by hiring people to do the same thing? And that's fine too. And then we start to crunch some numbers around that and say, okay, what does it look like to bring person number two, person number three, and so on. And then the timeline around all of that is really critical because sometimes I've seen practices that just grow a little too fast and it gets really expensive because then people are not paying for themselves yet. And then you're just covering all this cost and there's not the revenue to show for it. And so we want to make sure that that's aligned and stabilized before you bring in the next hire. And so we map this out on purpose through the timeline to ensure. And sometimes even hiring can take time. People post an ad and then they don't find the right candidate and it took longer than you thought and you're still busy, leads are still coming and you're like still trying to figure out, where you're going to find this talent. And so making sure that you have those mapped out, planned out with, timelines that align with sometimes the reality of hiring
Mhm.
and making sure those are realistic. And then understanding what are you going to compensate people? Maybe there's a range of compensation you're willing to give. It's also going to depend on their level of experience and expertise. You got to see what the market is currently offering for similar type of roles in the area, and then adjust if your roles are not full time and they're maybe part time flexible, remote, things like that that are added bonuses and benefits to people who are looking for jobs. It's important for you to take that into account because they're going to try to maybe do the math, but not really. So I see often where we look at full-time, salaries as comparison or pay structures, but we're part-time ish roles. And we have to do that math for them sometimes and say, hey, this is an equivalent to a full-time salary of X, or, you could earn that if you were full-time, but here we're doing a little less than full-time, let's say. So making sure that those are, comprehended in your plan before you go and just hire a bunch of people. And then all of a sudden you're like 5 people in, and then your compensation structure maybe is different for every person. And then you realize you're actually not making money. And that's the worst place to be at because you can barely pay yourself, barely pay your bills, and then you're really unhappy. And you're not going to want to do this for the long term. So then fixing that is a lot harder versus just starting the right way with the right compensation structure in place.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit to the kinds of things that make hiring expensive? Because
Yes.
I know that it's expensive, but I don't think I had uh
A breakdown.
yeah, yeah. Break it down.
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, there's going to be a time commitment, right? Even though you don't think about that as a cost, it is a cost because you could be focused on something else. You could be doing more sessions. You could be, out there building relationships, getting referrals, whatever else you could be doing with your time. Maybe even just like relaxing for a minute.
Yeah.
But it comes at a cost. So you're thinking about what role you're going to hire. You're taking the time to write a job description if you don't already have one. You're taking time to post it, and maybe you have someone helping you, an assistant or someone who can take some of those things off your plate. That will be great. Then you're going to
But you're paying
maybe,
that person too.
yep, you're paying that person too for their time. And then you are probably going to post the ad for the job, and you might be paying fees for getting that ad promoted to
Right.
more people to find the right person. So you have to budget for that. Now, that might be a one time cost. It might be 3 months of promoting the same post to get the people you need, so you have to account for that as well, those fees. And then you might, after a month of not getting traction, get a second platform that you're paying for. So higher fees can add up. Sometimes people are working with recruiters and they are expensive. So you have to consider that into your costs as well if you're choosing to go that route. And then you're going to have the time to review resumes. You're probably going to go through first round of interviews, second round, third round, whatever your process is takes time. And you're paying people to, be there and do the interviewing, right? So that's another cost. And then ultimately you choose a candidate. We're all excited. We have to buy them a laptop. We have to set them up on payroll. We have to do all the, and then by the way, that's one extra person on payroll. So we're paying a fee monthly for that. Guess what? You're putting them on your electronic records.
Yep.
So that's another fee per person too. By the way, that might have bumped you into the next tier of pricing. So now you're paying double. Like these are the things that people are not thinking about that also affect your business bottom line. And making sure that you account for those costs is going to be critical in your hiring process and after an integration time because there's training, onboarding. And guess what? That employee is probably not producing for the first maybe 1 or 2 months. Give them 3 months to get up to speed, fully, full caseload. So you have to account for that. So there's not a surprise and it doesn't put a strain on your business.
Yeah. And then you're paying payroll taxes every month too.
Yes, payroll is expensive. So there's taxes, state and federal withholdings. You're sending those quarterly. So there's all of that that's happening as well.
Health insurance.
Hope, yeah, health insurance benefits for 1K. If you match it, if you don't match it, like all the things that you chose to do in your business that you maybe didn't quantify.
Right.
Well, all that's happening right now. And there's things that are necessary, right? But ideally, you did the calculations of what the total compensation was going to be, not just the salary or not just the hourly, but really the total compensation that includes pay time off, sick time, leave, life insurance, whatever your benefit package is inclusive of, needs to account for total compensation. That's you as an owner, you get to see all those costs flow through your profit and loss.
So if I am a, solopreneur and I'm thinking about, hiring my first people, when somebody works with your company, do you bring up all of these things that they should be thinking about? Because I think these are things that we don't even realize that we should be thinking about.
Yes, like good CFOs that we are, we've done this before, and we know that there has to be a line for payroll taxes, there has to be a line for benefits, and those benefits might be different depending on the company we're working with, but we will bring that up as a question. What is your benefit package? And sometimes it's like nothing. We haven't done benefits yet. We're maybe just getting started, or we haven't thought about it. What should we do? That's a popular question, right? Like, what should we do? I'm like, well, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but here are some options of ranges of benefits you can offer and choose to offer. Office equipment, software fees per month, all those things come up in our conversation because it's part of building the profit and loss statement forecast. And we will bring that up to you and say, hey, have you thought about, marketing to get this person filled up with, new clients? And they're like, oh, what should I do for that? Then we talk about the marketing strategy. We say, okay, well, you can do this type of activities. And then we're going to measure, return on investment on those, ROI, and make sure that you're getting the benefit for what you're paying for. But these are things that we bring up to our conversation because we have experience in working with small businesses and know the industry and can say, hey, by the way, we've seen similar practices like yours have costs around these areas. Have you considered that? Or we see a lot of it in their actual spending already, but the things that are not there because they're moving from solo to group, we would bring up as part of the structure of building the forecast.
Whoop. Okay. And then when would someone potentially need a monthly fractional CFO? Like, when
Yeah,
do
well,
you
we
know
seem to
you've
work
really
well.
made it?
Yeah. Not made it, but just when the things get so complex that I can no longer do it myself and still grow the business and manage my team and, right? Because you
Yeah.
wear so many hats.
Yeah.
And also, at what point can I afford to? In as a line item to bring a CFO. And the thing I see often is there's different levels of CFOs you can hire. So there's going to be different prices for what people offer and call CFO services. But the gist of it is if they're forecasting and forward looking and providing you, monthly updates on your financials and talking to you through problem solving and obstacles that get in the way of achieving the goals and setting the strategy direction for the company, then that's, what you want to be having as your uh, kind of co-pilot in the car
Yeah.
telling you, by the way, I noticed you're about to run out of gas. We should stop for some gas before we run out.
Yeah.
Or take a right turn because that's his detour and we should not go through there because that's
Yeah.
going to be that kind of, partnership from a CFO. And roughly the size we've seen that works well for needing monthly ongoing support is around $1 million because the complexity again supersedes the owner's ability to keep their hands on everything. But by now they probably already had a bookkeeper or an accountant they were leaning on all the way through. Not to say we haven't worked with companies smaller than that as a project-based CFO, which we do get brought up, and sometimes we'll even stay quarterly with them until they get to that point in time where they can afford. And also, it's going to depend on how your practice, what are you affording and prioritizing in your practice, where you can afford to bring a CFO earlier than that. As part of your growth strategy, we've also worked with smaller companies that quadruple over 1 year of working with us. So, like, it just depends on where your priorities are for growing your business and how fast you want to grow it. Because at the end of the day, the value of a CFO is not only the growth top line revenue, but also your profit, the bottom line needs to be grown as well, outside of the investment on them as a service provider. So the results are either positive or negative, right? Like you can see on the profit and loss statement if the CFO helped you achieve better results than you could otherwise.
Yeah. Um, well, this is so helpful. Um, I feel like we could go on and on, but then I feel like I would be just like getting my own session.
Anytime. Happy
um,
to answer those juicy
oh,
questions.
well, I really feel like I really appreciate this conversation because I feel like the financial part doesn't have to be so scary. We don't have to do it alone. And there are actually people who, I think as a psychologist, when I think of money people, I think of like, oh my God, they're just gonna be talking way over my head. I'm not even gonna be able to understand what they're saying. Or I don't, or they're going to look, talk to me like I'm an idiot or something. Right. But
No.
I have had such a great experience working with my CFO has who's graciously introduced me to you, um, because the need is great, and I think the need is great before we think we need it.
Hmm.
I think that
Absolutely.
there is a lot to be said for setting yourself up for success, from the get go, rather than trying to figure it out on your own, or like even just asking a question here or there in a Facebook group, right? I mean, you're going to get a whole bunch of
Hmm.
answers and you just don't know, because it's like everybody's opinion. And it might be like, I want people to read this, so I'm just going to put a little blurb or whatever. But I mean, there's a lot to be said for like actually talking to an expert and just taking a little bit of time and a little bit of money to figure it out and set yourself up for success. And I could see myself working with someone like you, right? Like you've made everything very easy to understand, I think, right? And clear.
That's our job. And if that's not what you're getting from your CFO, I would reconsider who you're working with because they should be hand holding you through the process, answering your questions in a way that feels good to you, where you get it and feel empowered by that answer. Because now you're like, oh my God, okay, nobody has ever explained it to me that way. And then there's ways that you can explain things that are different. I mean, it's no different than what you guys do, right? Like what you guys do is way in over our heads. We would never be able to do that without the proper education. So it's no different. So money, I know, has a lot more feelings and emotions behind it. And we understand that too. And want to make sure that we take care of the clients in front of us in a way that they feel understood, that they don't feel like their questions are unnecessary, or that, maybe they've asked that before and gotten a, oh my God, how do you not know that answer? And then this time you're getting that, oh, interesting, you don't know. Let's go dive into it and make sure that you understand. Let me walk you through it together to make sure, we understand what's going on and that you have really good insight into your business finances. So you feel like, I get it now and I can actually do better because I understand it. That's the kind of feeling you should be getting with working with a CFO.
Well, I can vouch for that. Yeah. So, um, like, how do people connect with you, and what happens when someone reaches out? Like, who do they get? Do they get you? Do they get like, just so that people know? I always feel like that's a good thing to like know, so it makes
Yeah,
it a
good
little less
question.
scary.
Yeah. Well, in 7 years of business, we have built a team that, has the finance background that understands, and everybody in my company has at least 10 years of experience doing what they do. And that's important to us from a quality perspective. So when they reach out, we do have a team of CFOs that they can work with. So we will assign someone after we understand what are their needs and can we meet their support needs with our services. So that's really important to us. If you come to us and you tell us, what's going on and we don't think we're the best suited CFO for that situation, we will either find someone for you or make sure that you get, a good referral to take care of you from there. But if you are a good fit, we would love to support that. And we would offer you some options to work with us, either the one-time project or the ongoing, just depending on where you're at and what you're trying to achieve. We are able to assess what the need is and then provide you some options on how to work with us, because I think it's important that owners have options and choices, and then they can choose what's best for them after we have that conversation and get a lot more clarity about what we can do for them. And then once we have the good fit, on the services, we'll assign you to a CFO that will take care of you. They'll utilize our frameworks and knowledge and expertise the same way that we do, to make sure that your business is getting the financial results you desire. So if they're looking for us, you can check out our website at wealthworthwithin.com. We put a lot of free content. You can hit let's get started to set up a call to have that initial conversation about fit and needs and how we can serve you. And then if you're not ready to hire us, but you want to follow along educational content and get better at finances, then you want to sign up for our newsletter on our website or follow us on social media at Wealth Worth Within. We're very active on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this conversation and just making yourself available to the community of listeners that I have here. I've learned a lot, and yeah, I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. I love what you're doing supporting people who are considering growing their business from one to many. they definitely can use some guidance. And I'm so glad that they have you to provide that to them, as well as resources, like people like us who are available to service them as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. This episode is brought to you by Empower LEP, the #1 resource for aspiring and practicing LEPs with courses, trainings, and mentorship opportunities. The mentorship program is amazing. We have monthly live mentoring calls with me, Jana Parker, or with Meredith Gleason. We give a mini lesson. We have people vote on what they want to talk about. So we give that mini lesson. Then we open it up for group questions and discussions. We have this amazing community of like-minded LEPs. We're at all levels of practice. We come together, ask questions, learn from each other, all the things. So the mentorship is really perfect if you are struggling to navigate running a practice, if you feel isolated, if you're seeking professional support and community, if you just want to enhance your clinical and your report writing skills, maybe you feel stuck, maybe you feel like you're not sure of your next steps, maybe you want some accountability, all the things. Meredith and I, we have done it. We are doing it. We are living this LEP life day in and day out. So sign up for a month or get a discount for signing up for 3 months, whatever you want, whatever works for you. Go to empowerlep.com/mentorship-program for more information. Thank you for listening to the Empower LEP podcast. Episodes can be found at empowerlep.com. If you liked what you heard, please leave a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast player. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you have any questions for me, don't hesitate to connect. I would love to learn more. I can be found at jana@empowerlep.com.